What's up, everybody? Welcome back. John Levesque here. I am here with another tutorial, and today I am joined by my good friends Geetha and Daniel. How you guys doing?
Good.
Good.
Good,
Pretty good.
good. Welcome back. Welcome back. We have had a fantastic response to the first video that you guys shared on the document automation toolkit. And so I wanted to bring you guys back to come and expand on that and talk and dive a little bit deeper into some of the items, because I know that we did a brief overview. And so I think it'll be really beneficial for people to actually see a bit deeper dive into some of the tools. But before we do that, why don't you guys introduce yourself? Geetha, ladies first, please introduce yourself to everybody.
Sure. Hey, I'm Geetha Sivasailam, and I am a power addict, an enthusiast of all things Azure and Office 365. I'm also an MVP in the business applications domain. And I live in Dallas and work for Artist Consulting that's based out of Dallas, Texas.
Awesome. Laskewitz, introduce yourself, please.
My name is Daniel Laskewitz. I'm the Power Platform Lead at Society in the Netherlands. And I work a lot with clients on the implementation of Power Platform solutions, etc. And I get to advise a lot with our customers, etc. So, yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. You guys both didn't mention you're both also Power Automate MVPs.
Yes.
And if you guys want to connect with Geetha or Mr. Daniel Laskewitz, go ahead and check the description down below. I will have some info on both of them. All right. So now that the intros are out of the way, who wants to talk to me about what we are teaching today?
I'll start.
All right. Awesome.
Okay. So let's switch to my screen then.
There we go.
Okay. Yes. So here we are in the solution, the document automation base kit solution that will get deployed when you install the document automation solution. It has a lot of parts in here. So it has a Canvas app, it has choices, it has cloud flows, it has tables, security roles. So in this video, we're gonna talk mostly about all these parts and what they actually do in this solution. So before we dive into all the parts here, I wanted to talk a little bit about the prerequisites that you have to have before you can deploy this whole solution. So you need to have an environment with Dataverse, of course, because otherwise you can't deploy the whole solution. And you need to have one Power Automate license to run the flows. So that's something you need. And for the process owners and the reviewers, if you're going to use both those roles, you need to have a per app license. Next to that, you also need to have AI Builder capacity, of course, because we are using AI Builder in here to make sure that we get all the documents in there and we recognize all the bits inside of that document. So that's what you also need. You can use the community plan, for instance, but then you won't be able to share the apps and the flows in there. And otherwise, you can also use the trial license if you don't have the sufficient privileges in your org environments. But make sure to at least convert that trial license into a production one if you want to use this for a longer time. So with that out of the way, I'm going to talk about the tables that are in here. There's multiple tables in here. We have document automation prefix in here, and then it says something else. So we have the configuration, we have the data, the processing, and the taxonomy. The processing part that actually shows or that stores the document automation requests. It also stores the files that need to be processed. So whenever you get an email, it stores it into Dataverse, and it will store it in this table to have the files in there and to be ready to process. And it will also have the status of the processing in there. So whenever a document gets added to the processing part, it's probably ready to be processed, and that's where you need that status for. Next, we have the document automation data table, and that stores the values that are extracted from the document. So if you have an invoice number, etc., those kinds of things, it will put that into that document automation data table in there, and it can be a lot of data, a lot of parts in there. So that's where that table is for. Next to that, you also have the configuration table, and that will store the configuration of this solution. So it will store the information about the model that is going to be used in this solution, of course, because you need to train a model in AI Builder, and you need to, of course, say which model you are going to use in AI Builder. And next to that, there's also the taxonomy, and the taxonomy table maps where each model's labels are stored in the document automation data table. So that has a relation to the other table as well. Then we have some flows in here. I'm going to talk about the first two in here, and Geetha will take over after that with the Validator cloud flow in there. So let me switch to the importer flow, the email importer flow, and that's the flow that listens to new emails arriving in the server's mailbox. In here, I have it configured to when a new email arrives in my inbox, but you can, of course, change that to a shared mailbox if you want. It has some fields in here, include attachments, for instance. That's really handy because then it will filter out the emails that doesn't have an attachment in there. And that's what you can do here. You can also use a filter for the subject if you want to. And that's also really powerful because that way you can, for instance, filter on a certain subject that you want to have in there. After that, it will go into a loop, and it will loop through every attachment that's in the email. It will get the configuration from the configurations table. And then for each configuration, it will start a new processing. So it will add a new document processing row inside of that document automation processing table. And you can see that it uses the Outlook connector that we used before here. So it has the receive time in there, the attachment content type, for instance, the file name, and it shows that it's uploading the document. Then it will also use that configuration ID that we got before here. And after that, when the row is created, it will upload the document to the column inside of that row. After that, it will check if the content type is valid. And this is really, really handy because normally if you wouldn't do this, a lot of people use, for instance, a signature below their email. All those signatures with those social media icons below it? Those are usually GIFs or also image files that are in there. And when they are in there, it usually fails when you use AI Builder, for instance, inside of that. And these conditions make it possible for you to actually look for the content type of the attachments. And if it's equal to either application PDF, image JPEG, or image PNG, then it will update the document processing to start extraction. And if it's not equal to that, it will immediately say it's an invalid document. So that's really easy to have this condition in here. And this is also a method that you can use for when you are using AI Builder. So make sure to remember this because you can really use that a lot in your processes later on. So this is the whole email importer thing that we have here. You can see the different statuses here. That's something I wanted to highlight as well. The extracting data part, that's the status that we're getting into when the content type is correct, and otherwise it will show the invalid document.
Nice.
Let's switch to the next one. and that's going to be the processor one. And here we can see again the table document automation processing, and it filters on the processing status. And in here we have a number, and it's 91470001. And you might think, well, this is kind of interesting because we are filtering into a text, right? Not a number. But this is because there are choices inside of this solution, and we have the processing status also in here. That's one of the choices. And when you open this one up, you can see all the different items that are in here. And one of them is extracting data. And when you click view more, you can see that it has a number here. That's the value. So that's what we use here to make sure that we have the right choice here. So it's looking for all the rows that have document automation processing and are on the status extracting data. So that's
Nice.
what it's looking for, and then it's starting. And it also has the change type, by the way, for create or update. So it only will start when it's creating, updating, and it has a status set to this status. After that, it will initialize a variable, which we are going to use later on. It's going to get the attachment of the document automation processing again. It's going to get the model that we need to use from the configurations table. It will start the AI model part in here with all the different stuff in here as well. So you can see this is a reference to the get model to use. That's this action in here. And it will also get the base 64 encoded part of the get attachment. And that's, of course, this action. After that, it will go into two different paths. When it fails, it will set it to failed, and that's one action. So it will set this processing status to error in here, and if it goes all right, it will get a key to field mapping, and that's where the document automation taxonomy comes in. So it will grab the taxonomies that you have added to that table, or to that certain row that you have there. And also it will filter on, of course, the model that you need to use, because otherwise it won't be really handy in there. But it will get all the document automation taxonomies belonging to that model. Next to that, it will extract all the values in there. So it will also create, or it will set the data dictionary variable that we already created above here. So here you can see the data dictionary variable, and it will set the data dictionary variable to all the parts that are already gotten from the get key to field mapping in there. And that will set it here as the outputs from that compose action. After that, it will create the document automation data, and that's where all the values are saved. And it will get all kinds of data fields in here. And you can see when you hover the expression, you can see that it gets the data 1 field from data dictionary, and data 10 field, etc. So all these fields that you have here are parts of the data dictionary variable in here. And then it will, when it's done with this, it will update the processing status and processing data, and it will set it to validating data. And from there, that's actually the next flow that we have, and that's the part that Geetha is going to show.
So let me ask real quick before we change over. Everything we've seen so far here, if I was someone who is just seeing this for the first time, how much configuration did you do for this, Daniel? Or did this come out of the box like this?
The flows came out of the box. You still need to configure the AI model and, of course, the configuration in there. So you need to make sure that you have the right configuration, and also you need to make sure that you have the right mapping of those fields. But that's also it's all part of the configuration that's explained in the docs, really in a nice way. So it's really easy to do that as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so once I do all that, then these flows, basically all that information gets plugged in here in these flows and things, and then this all just kind of works. I don't have to do a whole lot of changing to these flows to make them work for me.
No.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Yeah,
All right.
they are like broken down into modules based on the different phases of your whole process. It makes it so easy to maintain going forward because these are the 3 flows, and each flow is actually associated with each part in that full cycle of the whole automation process.
Totally. All right, Geetha, changing over to you.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is the last flow, which is the document automation validator. And this really is one of the important last steps in the whole process, because here is where you can apply any business rules if you would want to, and also make decisions on if you really need your documents to have any kind of manual validation. Now, the trigger point for this flow is once your document has been processed and all of the data has been extracted into Dataverse, and it actually really checks for the status to be in a validating state. So that's when this really gets triggered. And then this flow has been kept really simple in the sense it just has a trigger point based on the status, which would be a validating data status. And then the second step over here, what this flow is really doing is just giving you a placeholder to plug in your business rules. So right now, this is just picking any document that got triggered as part of this flow and then changing the status to say manual review. And this is what's going to flow into the app, the document automation application as well, and that we will take a look at it next. But you have the flexibility to go and extend this. That's the whole purpose of this kit, is that you have the placeholders and the templates, but now you can extend it based on how the business logic needs to be for the kind of data that you're trying to automate. For example, if you feel like this is AI extracted data and you want to have some kind of a gating mechanism based on the confidence level, and let's say the confidence level is below, say, 80%, you could come in and plug in a business logic here to do something else based on that. Or let's say you want certain documents to not go through a manual process. You want them to be auto-approved. If the dollar amount is of a certain threshold or meets a cap, then you could do that as well. So that way you can have branching around how you want those documents to be routed, and you could do all of that within this flow. And this flow will take care of all of your business rules that you would want to implement.
Nice. And so I would then put those things kind of in between these 2 steps then, right?
Yes, you can plug them in. Yeah, this can go away, or this can be a part of your, depending on how many different logic that you would want to implement. But you're right in that this would be right after the trigger, you would start adding the new steps that you would want based off of the conditional logic that you would need.
Nice.
All right, so let's move on to the app. Just a quick few callouts in the app. Now, here are a bunch of documents that have been processed. The data has been extracted. Now, when you look at the app, the kit by itself allows 2 personas. One is the reviewer, and the other is the process owner. As a process owner, I get to see documents, I get to see what status they're in, and I get to do everything. And I also get to see a new tab configuration. Now, this actually tells me what is the default AI model that I'm actually using or is associated to this process. When I click on that, this shows me this is the model that I trained, or I used the sample documents to train the model with. And I can also see what fields and what table mappings have been done and what labels have been used for the specific fields. So here we have a certain table mapping here, just describing the description and the item total. And then we have the field mapping with all the different fields that I want to capture. Now, if I choose to make a change, let's say there is a new field that shows up and I go and process a new set of documents, and I have to make sure that you come in here and you hit the refresh button. So that way that association is refreshed and the app knows that going forward, any document that's processed, it really needs to look for these new additional updated field mapping or updated model that it needs to be looking at. And one other step that you also want to do, or you want to know, or just keep in mind, is that let's say you come up with a new model, then here's where you would want reload your models and pick the one that you really want to associate to it. So this app really kind of gives you like an admin view on maintaining the whole process. So that's just how the owner privilege, and that's what the owner privilege really gives you. So let's go back to the actual document itself. Now, as a reviewer, I can actually go look at a document. For example, I have this document over here, which I can see had a status of manual review, and then I have my invoice. I have all my fields and tables here. Now, if I feel like the AI extracted data is incorrect, or if I need to make a change, I can make a change and then validate it right here. And then one thing to note is, as soon as the user picks a document or opens a document, they are assigned, or they literally own that document. So that all that process is already taken care of. So you can have two people working at the same document at the same time. It's kind of locked to the user that's currently reviewing it. So I thought that was a pretty good way to stop concurrent updates happening. So that way you just have one person reviewing it and having ownership of it. Now, let's take a quick look at how the security roles really work. So there are two specific security roles that are available. Now, I have two users in my environment, and I'm just going to quickly show you how you can work with that. So you have the system customizer role. This is a role that gives you the full ownership on the app and all the whole process. Now, I've assigned myself with that role. But let's say you have another user, and let's say in your organization, you don't really need to use personas, and you want everybody to be able to make reviews, or you don't want to have a separation of different roles. Then you could totally go to the second user, and then you can make sure that you don't assign them those roles. So it's up to you on how you want to manage. Given you two personas to work with, but you can always choose to go one way or the other. So that's just a quick call out on how it works and just where you can go make the changes. And I think one other limitation you would note when you start playing around with this is that you don't have a way to go back and actually export the data from within the app. The app doesn't have that capability yet, but you can always go back to the table in Dataverse and use the export data functionality to export the data if you want to start working with exporting it and maybe pushing it to another data source and things like that. So those are just some of the items that you want to make sure that you're aware of while you're working with or playing around with the tool set.
So two questions. One, that you say the data set lives in Dataverse, and you could actually query that table. Could I then build like a dashboard that visualize that table to show me some of that data directly? Like could a dashboard query that data directly?
Yeah, you can, because it still lives in Dataverse. So you could totally build a Power BI dashboard that feeds off of the data from those tables.
Cool. Okay. And then my second question was, I saw we went from Power Automate to Power Apps, and then I saw Dynamics 365 pop up at the top when we were looking at roles. So can you explain to everybody kind of the jump there? How we're jumping over to Dynamics and why we're doing that, and how if they're unaware or unfamiliar, what that means for them.
And you can also take like 20 minutes to explain Dynamics.
Well, you keep it short and sweet. So this is what it really means. So that's kind of is your container that holds all of your infrastructure, your settings, your configurations, your security permissions, and everything. It's kind of like this little bubble that stores all of that data. The app is just more of a visual, an overview of how everything comes together for you. But behind the scenes, your data store, everything lives in Dynamics under just behind the scenes of how everything is tied in together, and the whole connecting the dots is what you do with the flow and the app. But then the reason why we jumped over to Dynamics is just to show you how security roles work. So that's where you would go and assign your users, make sure the users that have access to your environments have certain roles or privileges that they need to be having so they can actually act as that role when they start using the app.
Cool.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
What's good to mention here is some parts are still in Dynamics, and that's because those haven't been converted yet to the unified interface or the Power Apps or Power Platform environments. So if you look at, for instance, the admin center, not everything is in there yet. There's still a lot of stuff where you need to switch to the classic mode or something like that. There are some things in there. I believe users is in there, but I don't believe you can do a lot of things there. You can't assign a role in there yet. It's going to be later. It's going to come there eventually. But for now, we still need to switch to the dynamic side of things. because of course Dynamics was there before the Power Platform, and Dataverse is still heavily based on the Dynamics environment from before.
So that's why I wanted to bring it up. If you were wondering why you saw Dynamics, it's because we're talking about Dataverse and tables. That information from the Power Platform and Dataverse actually lives in Dynamics. That's behind the scenes, behind everything. And so I just wanted these guys to kind of explain that to you, why you're seeing them jump between it. And so thank you guys for clarifying that.
That was a good question. Yeah, we should have walked through it before, right? To make sure.
Yeah, no.
We think we know about it, and then we just start showing things. But thanks, John. Thanks for.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, awesome, guys. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out and deep diving into some of this architecture and the back end and how this all comes together. Really appreciate your time being here today.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I know that everybody will have some questions. And so if you guys have questions, go ahead and drop them down in the comments below. I know Geetha and Daniel will be happy to jump on and answer those for you. Otherwise, though, go ahead and check the description and get connected to these guys. Follow them on Twitter, check out their YouTube channels, get connected to the content that they are creating all the time, because it is awesome. And you can see just from a taste of them coming and hanging out here, a little bit of what they do all the time. So one more time, thank you guys so much for being here. For you guys at home, thanks for coming and hanging out. Get connected to these guys. Click like, click subscribe. Much love from me. We'll see you in the next one.